So in just a few weeks, can you believe it? A lot of kids are heading back to the classroom for the first time in more than a year. And with that, it's maybe anxiety inducing. It's a little bit stressful. So joining me this morning to talk about how parents can get the kids ready for this transition, Dr. Elizabeth Meade with Swedish Medical Center. Doctor, good to have you. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Yes, good to have you. So, it's been more than a year of virtual learning. We're talking about kids getting back into the classroom. So talk about how this can be a little anxiety inducing for the kids.
Yeah, many kids have been out for a year and a half entirely or sort of barely back during that time. So I think it depends on the age of the child a little bit. Younger kids may have a lot of separation anxiety. We may see some regression to behaviors that are sort of typical of younger ages than those kids are just because they've been out for so long. And then older kids have a lot of issues to worry about. This is a time that's really stressful for kids in general. So older kids and teenagers, their bodies may have really changed. They may have had weight changes. They may be going through puberty. They may have not really been around other kids for a long time. So I think there's just a lot to think about, both for kids and for parents.
So when it comes to that, what can parents be doing right now to help prepare kids?
Yeah. Again, for younger kids, I think it depends on your child and sort of what their situation has been. But for a lot of kids who really have been with parents or caregivers pretty much 24 hours a day for the last year and a half, part of this is just getting them used to being away from home and away from those parents or caregivers, right? So having even shorter outings, maybe an outdoor play date with someone else, going to a grandparent's house or something like that, just to get them used to sort of being out of the house. And then it's important to talk with kids of any age really about what their anxieties are, what they're excited about when it comes to school, but also what their specific concerns are and worries are. And for those older kids, simple things like just talking through it with them, making sure they have clothes that fit them, that they feel comfortable in, and asking them sort of what they think would be helpful. So for some kids, that might look like getting together with classmates that are going to be in their same school before the start of the school year, so they sort of have those familiar faces, or even just going to the school, because for a lot of kids, this is going to be a new school, right? They've been out for a year and a half. They may be going to a different school building than they've ever actually been to before.
And now, Dr. Meade, I have to ask you about parents as well, because you just mentioned it, maybe getting together with friends, having a little play date. What about some of those awkward conversations that kids might encounter when it comes to parents maybe approaching vaccination status of classmates or colleagues? How do you even start that conversation?
Yeah, this is one of those tough conversations that we have to have as parents. And that's like a lot of other things. We ask about guns in people's homes when our kids go to play at someone's house. We ask about pools and whether they're fenced and trampolines and all sorts of health hazards. And I think asking about vaccine status is just one of those conversations that we have to have and that we really should be all open and transparent about. There's no judgment associated with it, right? But I think it's important to know that if your child is going to be spending time with other children, what the status of their vaccine is, as well as the other people in the household if they're going over to someone else's house.
Yeah, those are some really good tips. I do have to, let's be honest. You know what it's like. A lot of parents did the best they could when it came to homeschooling during the pandemic. What happens if your kid might be, maybe fell back a little bit, or, you felt like your kid was set back during virtual learning? How do you approach that? How do you rectify that?
Right. We have all been in survival mode, right? I think that it's very clear. And we know that there will be some learning loss for many kids. Just not being in that in-person school environment, not kind of having that hands-on time with teachers and really that developmental time to play and interact with peers can be significant. So we know kids are going to have some learning loss. I think the very most important thing is to support the emotional and the mental sort of health of your child, and to make sure that they know that they're loved, they're supported, that home is really a safe space, that they've got adults and caregivers in their corner. And we have to recognize there's sort of two camps of kids that really may be impacted by this. So there are the kids who maybe were already struggling a bit and have fallen farther behind and really may need some assistance to catch up. There's also kids that are very highly motivated, that are sort of those straight A students, and they may feel a lot of anxiety and stress about being behind. So I think just reminding everybody that we are all in the same boat, that we may have some learning loss, but really that's across the board. And that this school year, I think, is going to be really imperative and key to sort of help with catch up, but also just make sure that everyone is feeling comfortable and sort of feeling like they know what they need to do to get back on track. And that's one of the reasons why we think it is just so important for kids to really be back in school in person this year.
Yeah, and I know that we talked to the association that you're part of, the Pediatric Association, about that and why you were concerned about kids maybe regressing during the pandemic. There were some concerns about that. So, doctors have to be feeling pretty good about this right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, getting kids back to school is critical. So for the vast majority of kids, being in that in-person learning situation is just going to be so much better for their development and their learning than it has been to do virtual learning. But I have to say, we have a kindergartner or now a first grader really at our house, and I have been so impressed with how the teachers in the schools have handled that virtual time. They just have done incredible things and really been able to achieve a level of interaction with their students that I did not think could happen virtually. So really hats off to teachers and schools
Oh,
for
yeah.
handling this the way they have. But I think it's so important that we get kids back in person so they can really continue that learning in the way they're meant to, which is through a lot of play and peer interaction.
Yes, and it's a little sense of, normalcy. That'll be nice for everyone involved. Dr. Elizabeth Meade, thank you
That's great.
so much. We appreciate you.